Hello, BookTube. I want to give you a Monday morning report on the reading I got done this weekend. It's a remarkably low number of books. It's 3 books that I got done, 3 that I read from start to finish. I also, in that same amount of time, finished a murder mystery that I'd been reading on my phone, but I'm counting only the ones that I started and read right through to the end. And my only defense of why the number is so small is because 2 of them were enormous and took a lot of attentive reading. They were enormous, and you couldn't just fly through them. And the first of those was, so I think we've seen them all on this channel before. The first was this. It was, let's wait for the color to seep back in. Is it going to do that? I can never tell. Oh my god. The first was Victor Sebastian's book on Lenin. That has some sort of cheesy melodramatic subtitle like "The Man, the Dictator, the Mass Murderer" or something like that. And let's see if we can get this to work. There we go. We'll bring in the bright blue. Brings out the bright blue of his murderous, homicidal eyes. And the justification for the book, the stuff that Sebastian writes about in his preface and that's covered extensively in the notes to the book, is that it was he delves a lot into the human side of Lenin. That he reads the diaries of Lenin and his friends. That he reads the correspondence and pays attention to the ladies in Lenin's life, that sort of thing. And that opening note made me wary, because that always worries me, that when people try to humanize inhuman monsters, it's a kind of weird outgrowth of the moral relativism of the late 20th and the entire of the 21st century, where everybody gets a trophy, and where where there must have been something good even about Stalin or Lenin and or Hitler, and that kind of thing, of course, drives me crazy. And so the first 20-30 pages of the book, they're really well written. It's a really easy book to read. But the first 20 or 30 pages plus the apparatus had me worried that that Sebastian was going to ask me to like Lenin in any way, shape, or form. That he was going to make any kind of a case that the fact that you're nice to dogs, or that you can identify 18 different kinds of mushrooms when you're out for a nature walk, somehow vitiates the fact that you put whole populations to death for no other reason than bloodlust. And thankfully, the book doesn't do that. In fact, the personal elements that Sebastian works into the book, I don't know if I should keep showing it, because I don't know if it's going to leach out the color. The personal elements that he works into the book, actually, by the time you're barreling along, by the time you get to the horrific events that are the climax of the whole thing, those elements actually serve to enhance the horror in a way that I'm still trying to figure out how exactly that happened. If I write about this book at length, I will figure it out then. But one way or another, I mean, I have read many really good biographies of this monstrous, horrible man. Many really good books about him. More than I probably should, except he's kind of important to 20th century history. So I naturally compared this in my mind to a lot of them, and I actually think that it stands up really well. It may be what its publisher is kind of sort of hinting at, the best one-volume biography in English. It may be that. I'm not 100% sure. It's got a crowded field of competitors, and if that's true for Lenin, it's even more true for the other biography that I read this weekend. Another monster of a book. This is Robert Dallek's biography of Franklin Roosevelt. The subtitle is a political biography, but as with the Lenin book, there's quite a lot of personal stuff in here. But Dallek has really good credit with me, not so much for his book about President Kennedy, which I thought was fawning and a little juvenile, but his enormous book on President Johnson I thought was really good. One of the better Johnson books that I've read, and a difficult person to write about, difficult presidency and period to get right, even in a huge book. So I went into this giving him all the benefit of the doubt, and he bore it out. I was not disappointed. This is a magnificent book. The questioning that I had about the Lenin book, it has lots of great predecessors. It stands really well with them. I'm not quite sure one way or another, but it does about its exact place, but it does really well. Those questions are a lot weaker with this book. This is probably the best uh, one volume FDR biography that's ever been written. I've read multiple volume biographies of this man. I've read personal studies, and I've read tons and tons of idiotic stuff about how he embodied the spirit of the age, or his leadership secrets, or the salacious stuff about affairs or whatnot, uh, and tons of books on his final years, on his last years of life. He died in office, and there have been many books on that. There was one last year. There was a very good one that came out earlier this year, uh, by Robert Leveld. I think we saw it on this channel. It was very good. It was either earlier this year. It was very late last year. Uh, that author came to the conclusion that in his final years, FDR was dying, actively dying. That he was suffering from advanced arterial disease that may or may not have affected everything about him. And you get some of that in this, but the main strength of this book is just what the subtitle promises: the politics. In fact, Dallek a couple of times stresses things that previous FDR biographers, wanting to concentrate on his personal heroism in the face of polio, or the fact that you at the time you couldn't show that you were diseased on camera. Uh, as opposed to that, Dallek really wants to concentrate on uh, FDR's political acumen and political genius. And it works. It really, really works. In fact, reading the book all throughout reminded me of the best parts of Robert Caro's book on President Johnson, Master of the Senate, which really dug into the mechanics of how one man can manipulate a system if he understands it, and if he understands the other men in the system. I thought that was captivating. It's a very long book. I'm not really sure how long, because I read it as a an e-file, but I think the finished book is going to be a doorstop, and I'll well, you'll see, because I'll get it on camera. And but uh, the Lenin book, you'd have to well, of course, you'd have to be interested in the Bolsheviks and the Russian Revolution and Lenin himself. Uh, Sebastian kind of sort of plays insider baseball a lot of the time in the book, many different points in the book. I stopped myself and thought, well, okay, but would you get that at all? This last 10 paragraphs, would you get it at all if you hadn't read all those other Lenin biographies? What if this were the first one? But Dallek is much more mindful of his storytelling duties. So this book, I don't know, I've mentioned on this channel before that this fall in America, in American bookstores, is going to be an extremely biography heavy fall, and a lot of those biographies are going to be U.S. presidents. There's a long list of them. There's Truman and Hoover and Grant and even Ford. Chester A. Arthur is getting a biography. A whole bunch of people. I have a feeling that this will do really well, and it should. If you know somebody who really likes presidential biographies, and of course FDR is a golden name for that sort of thing, this is the book to get. It's superb storytelling in addition to everything else. Uh, when I was done with those two books, though, I have to admit, reading two gigantic biographies back to back, I needed something of a palate cleanser. So I went to another book that we've seen on this channel. This is Lord of Lies by Amy Sandus. And this is the third book in her Fallen Ladies series, which we follow the Chadwick sisters. This book in particular is the younger sister, Portia, who in the earlier two books has had smaller parts. She's just the typical headstrong younger sister. This book, she stars on her own, and a scandal, a problem in her family with her sisters, pushes her to seek the help of a disreputable and mysterious man who is willing to help, but wants to shield her from the dangerous world that he can sense right away she really wants to experience. And I thought, well, okay, that's cookie cutter. It'll be fun to read. It'll be a nice page turner. But it actually turns out that I think that Portia is probably by far the most interesting of her sisters, and she's certainly the most interesting character in the book. Oh my God, she walks away with the book because she's not a fool. Ordinarily, when you have a young female character in a Regency romance who really wants to ride to foxes or explore the mean back streets of the city, she's an idiot, and she doesn't know that she's in over her head, and that doesn't happen to Portia. And that quality, the quality of her being able to think on her feet, uh, sparks the hero's affection in a way that I don't often see in Regency romances, much though I love them. Usually that affection is a given, not only on the part of the characters, but on the part of the author as well. In this book, the man actually sees something in the woman that he didn't see when he first met her, and that he finds attractive, and it grows, and it's an organic thing. So I guess I guess the long and the short of it is that I was not disappointed this weekend at all. I read an invigorating big biography of Lenin that does not try to exonerate him. It does try to humanize him. I'm not quite sure to what point, and maybe that's why I have some reservations about the book. I'm not really sure why you would bother to tell me that Lenin could be kind in his hunting dachau, and his hunting dachau on the lake with his buddies. I'm not sure why you would go to the bother of telling me for almost all of the chapter how affable he could be. I'm not sure what the point of that is. Maybe a line, but surely if you have created a system that has destroyed a country and killed millions of people, we should be keeping our eye on the ball. But I loved it anyway. I thought it was really, really good, and the Robert Dallek book is a masterpiece. Especially as what it says, as a political biography, as FDR on the phones in the Oval Office, revamping the political landscape in which he finds himself. Absolutely fascinating. And Lord of Lies was really good too. I know for certain that you can read it without having read the earlier two books, because when I read 30 pages into it before I even remembered that I'd read the earlier two books. So and didn't remember much about them. So you're absolutely fine to pick into this one. And that was it. That was that, and finishing up a murder mystery was the whole reading that I did this weekend. So I'm a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of the number of books. So I'm going to correct that this week. I'm going to pour effort into correcting that this week. Won't be hard. But anyway, that's my Monday morning report. And I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.